Hello, everyone. Mr. Nobody here. I want to bring you a little something from Making Nobody Happy. This is an entry entitled Naming the God of Wokeism. So, let's begin. One of the most cult-like elements of wokeism, or critical theory, or whatever you wish to call it, is its persistence in separating you from your culture by any means necessary. Its adherents are orphans of time, isolated and cut off from their family, their culture, their history, all the traditional anchors of self. Your history exists to be criticized and deconstructed. Your family must be challenged and deconstructed. You're told of your family, your history, your life, your cultural artifacts, not that they might be sinful, but that the only question is finding the sin and exposing it. They're all inherently and fundamentally sinful, and your job is to be the inquisitor, taking them apart. Only by making yourself their informer can you escape their punishment. That is a typical tactic of many cults. People must be separated and orphaned from their traditional identity structures, as they could provide competition or refuges against the anointed vision. I've known people who did fall into cults, and one of the first tasks undertaken was to separate them from their parents. So they have to look to the group for what their parents were providing. And so it goes to friends, community, culture, and all the other competing loves. All other refuges and avenues of stability and sanity and meaning and self are eliminated as options. That way, the full self can be devoted to the cause in the society to be, the new structure, the new history, the new family, the new culture. And you won't feel any qualms about tossing the old one down the drain. That's why socialism has so often emphasized the breaking down of local and familial affiliations. As long as you had loyalty to someone just because they were your father, you might not inform on them to the state. So long as you had loyalty to someone just because they were your neighbor or countryman, you might not consent to letting them be purged as an agent of oppression. And both of these were considered serious problems in the Soviet Union. Familial attachment and community attachment were an impediment to the state's monopoly on your love, loyalty, meaning, and morality. Never mind that the state can't really love you or care about you as your parents do. The promise is there. These are things standing in the way of your happiness, and you can't reach the paradise or vision of righteousness unless you can let go of all lesser attachments and subject them to the rule of the vision. There is a sacrificial instinct in humanity, an understanding that giving up something now can help you secure something better. And the more precious the sacrifice, the more pleasing it is, the more devout you are, the more righteous you then become, and the more you do to advance the kingdom. And that instinct isn't exactly wrong, but it can certainly go wrong. That's the trickiest thing about it. Wokeism demands human sacrifice. It is a greedy and devouring and merciless God. Unlike the Christian God who pays the penalty for us, who forgives us and loves us and provides the ram, wokeism possesses no such mercies and offers no such redemption or substitution. Only sacrifice forever and for all. Sin is innate in all things. It is not a question of if you and your family and culture and gender and history were sinful, but only how. Only exposure and crucifixion can cure them. Only fire, only sacrifice. The more precious and dear, the better, the more true your devotion. The sacrifices must be continual. You must always be giving up something or someone to show your devotion to the cause, in the big things and in the small things. Bring your movies, your books, your jokes, your music, your friendships, your food, your profession, your government, your money, your speech. Bring it all so it can be offered up in hope that the perfume of it will rise up to the great judge and that it will satisfy her so that she will pass over you for today. For she is a devouring and perfecting flame that promises all and devours all, a God of guilt who judges all the powers and products of man and demand that they be given up, because only in her hands can they be pure and righteous and just. Only when all differences and all particulars, all earthly loyalties, all freedoms are consumed and made obedient to her, will all be perfect. then all will be as one in her. This is the kindness she offers, the equality, the love. And her name is Amit. Now that's the end of that passage, but I just want to point out that I wrote that long before the show Moon Knight came out. And probably most people weren't familiar with Amit who didn't grow up on Egyptian mythology. When I was in school as a kid, we actually took a whole little course on Egyptian mythology, which I really enjoyed. I always enjoyed mythology. I love the way that it personifies and lets you look at these abstract things about humanity and about human culture and ideas. And Amit, if you're not familiar with her, is the terrible, devouring god of the afterlife. She's the great punisher. So when you die, your heart is weighed on a scale next to the feather of truth. And if the feather is heavier than your heart, then your heart is fed to Amit. And Amit is a combination of all the most terrifying predators that the ancient Egyptians were familiar with, all mished and mashed together into one creature. And then if your heart was balanced with the feather of truth, you go on into the afterlife. And depending on how things weigh, there's some variation there too. But you definitely don't want to be fed to Amit. Amit is the great devourer. Now there's this TV show Moon Knight in whom Amit is actually the villain. And so maybe more people will have a touchstone with the idea of Amit through that way. Although now she's a giant, crocodile person fighting a huge bone raven creature. And that's a little more silly approach to it, but at least it gives people familiarity with the idea. But I think if you read about Amit and you understand her, I think you'll understand why I chose her as a good personification of this particular religious movement. I think that if one were to pick a god, Amit would be the right choice. Anyway, that's all for today. I'll see you later.